Solitaire Rose Radio, Episode 40, PG-13, a short story by Cory Strode. So, the man said, smiling and offering me a seat, tell me a story. I smiled, knowing I already had him in the palm of my hand. I'm a storyteller. Even if I can't get a damn script onto paper from time to time, put me in a room with an audience, and I'll keep them listening. Not because of any of the writing classes I took, because that's what I can do. I can tell a story. It all starts with a man who is just let out of prison, I began. Remembering this is a movie guy and he wants a hook, I made sure to put it in terms he could understand as I continue. Just like the one in Shawshank Redemption. He served his time and has actually changed. However, the only offer for a job is from someone he was pen pals with while he was in jail. Someone who offers him a job taking care of rescue dogs. St. Bernards, like in the cartoons, except they aren't wearing the little wooden barrels full of booze. So this is a kid's movie, he said, reaching for a yellow legal pad and a pen. Not really. It has cute dogs, and there's a lot of humor, some of it slapstick, but it's a fish-out-of-water story. You see, he's lived here in L.A. his whole life. He's never even seen snow. I hope to strike a chord with the executive in the suit that cost almost as much as my car, trying to get him to forget anything about it being a kid's movie. I paused, hoping he would put away the damn pen and paper, but it was too late. It was doomed. I could see what he'd written. St. Bernard's, slapstick, winter release, PG. I should have just finished up right there, promised a script, told my agent I want story by credit, nothing else. But no, as any of the women who've ever left me can attest to, I refuse to give up. I keep at it until all hope is not only lost, but a long distant memory. Worse, I saw it as a challenge. How can I get you to add 2 more of your little chicken scratchings to your little yellow legal pad of doom? You backbiting slime weasel. How much do I have to do to get you to put a 13 after that PG? We show him trying to get a job here in L.A., and no one will hire him for anything because he's an ex-con. When the economy is good, it's hard enough for an ex-con to get work. But when jobs are scarce, I hear you on that, he interrupted. Normally, if someone interrupts me telling a story, they get a glare or a comment about how their genealogy must go through various animal phylum. But this was a man who could give me a check for thousands of dollars, and I'd never had a check that big at that time. In fact, until this meeting, I'd never had any of my writings go for more than 3 figures, and those checks usually started with a 1. Keeping that in mind, I let him interrupt and smiled as he went on. Before I had this job, I saw tons of people laid off over at Paramount, and those bastards at Fox would fire you for saying something bad about the president. My agent had to call everyone before they were able to get me a job here, but this is what I wanted anyway. This is the studio of the future, and he believed it. I still think he would have set new records in a decent drug test. Seeing him pause, I thought, this must be my turn, and started back in. Anyway, which is the universal word meaning shut the holy hell up, calls his friend in Canada and says he wants to take the job. Problem is he doesn't have any money to get there, and his friend is skint as well. Skint? Yeah, sorry, broke. Skint means broke. I just used one of my worthless little tricks to give me a bit of power over him. If you know slang, the executive doesn't. He thinks you're far more hip than him. Therefore, better to tell him about what is cool. I also knew that tonight he'd be using that piece of British slang at one of his many fetish clubs less than a mile away from his office to appear to be a hell of a lot more cool than he actually was. And it would work. Although it would only work because of the cost of his suit and his love of being called slime. But as long as it makes you happy, who cares, right? I saw him smile. I knew he was putting that word away in his painfully empty mental Rolodex. Score 1 for me and being a manipulative, pretentious bastard. I spin my tale about how one intrepid hero hitchhikes to Canada, meeting people along the way that teach him about life. Real heartwarming stuff. The kind of stuff that's in movies. Unless it's about drifters picking up hitchhikers and killing them in inventive ways. Then it's not very heartwarming. When I get to the part about him learning to train the dogs, I'm interrupted again. Does it have to be in Canada? I smile. No, it doesn't. But it does have to be where they have a lot of snow. And when people think Canada, they think snow. It's an easy fit. I see, he said. A nice way of saying forget it. Canada's not going to work for us. With patriotic correctness and everybody waving the flag, I can't get a damn thing through the studio set in another country unless it's a U.S. soldier blowing the shit out of something in another country. I want to film in Canada because their dollar's worth about 23 cents. That way the studio can save money. But I can't have it set in Canada. Can we say it's in Iowa or Illinois? I could do that. No, I couldn't, you jello-brained empty suit. But if we need it set in the U.S., Alaska would be a much better fit. They have mountains and snow that neither Iowa nor Illinois are known for. He thought a bit, reaching for his legal pad. As he paused, I wish I knew a potent form of black magic in order to control his hand and write Alaska on it, as well as the 13 next to the PG, that would save me from being a Disney Sunday night movie writer. He wrote Iowa, and it took a supreme effort of will not to leap over the desk and strangle him with his Jerry Garcia tie and dangle the body out the window. But after he wrote it, he said, "You're sure there aren't any mountains in Iowa? Because we don't have anything coming out for the spring and for the Midwest. Farmers go to movies too, you know." I gave my biggest fake smile, the one I used when explaining to the bank clerk that there must be some mistake and there is money in my account, and said, "I'm afraid that Iowa doesn't have any mountains. We can set it in Colorado, but..." and shrugged, letting him come up with the reason why not. I'd already proved I was cooler than him and hoped any silence would work in my favor. Thankfully, it did, and he crossed out Iowa and wrote Alaska. One down, one to go. I need that 13, or else this is going to be in a Disney movie. One down, one to go. I still needed that 13 next to the PG, or I'd be relegated to the kids section at Target. Sadly, from here it was a typical Hollywood three-beat story. Hero has obstacle of not knowing anything about Alaska or dogs, and thinks the townsfolk are all morons. After being saved by one of the dogs, he turns over a new leaf, takes his job seriously, and trains the dogs to win the local race. After he does this, he saves the life of his friend who's trapped in a freak snowstorm, much rejoicing and love, with a fade-out of happy snow-covered people. Of course, I made it sound a lot better when I told him, and it was a lot wittier, but let's be honest, it's not a very original story. It's not even a very good story. However, it would be a movie that would get made, and give me enough money to sit back and write a great novel that no one but a host on your local public radio station, who speaks in a hushed, sonorous tone, usually reserved for announcing funeral services, would read and promote to his audience. No matter what trick I pulled out, he didn't grab for that yellow legal pad again. Not once. Magic numbers 13 did not get written next to the PG, even when I suggested a sex scene toward the middle being interrupted by one of the dogs, thinking his cries of pleasure are the same as yelling "come here" to them in training. I wanted a semi-adult vehicle, and he wanted a Hot Wheels. The problem was he had the money. We shook hands. I said goodbye. He said he'd call me. I said I looked forward to it. I was lying. He wasn't. He said it was all but in the bag, and as I went out of his office, I said to myself, I don't want to write a damn kids movie. You have no idea how shocked I was that there was a check waiting for me at the desk of the receptionist with a hand-scribbled note saying, "Get that bastard to start writing." I took the check, left the office, was out on the streets of L.A., and wished I was anywhere else in the world. For all the talk of how great or horrible L.A. is, I don't find it much different than any place else. There's just more of it. The pierced teenagers are in bigger groups and have more piercings. The jerks have more money, and that makes them bigger jerks. Morons, however, come in all stripes out there. That's not all that important to the story I'm telling here, unless you want to know why I don't live there anymore. I could say it was to be more secluded, to be a better writer, or that I wanted out of the rat race, or any other lie, but the truth is that people there piss me off to no end. And when you have money, that's enough. I was to meet my girlfriend at the Hollywood Smoothie a couple blocks away when we got done so she could shop with my new money. The Hollywood Smoothie used to be the Hollywood Coffee House. Still had a coffee machine as big as a car embedded in the wall. Before that, it was probably the Hollywood Evian Palace, and before that, it was probably the Hollywood Crack and Hooker stand. Take that back. The Hollywood Crack and Hooker shop was a few doors down, but they called themselves a tattoo parlor with "While You Wait" and advertised "guaranteed to piss off your parents no matter how old you are" piercings, while they make you a soda. She was having a banana smoothie and talking to a guy who looked like he really missed the Grateful Dead more than life itself. I wish I could say something nice about her at this point, but I find myself utterly incapable of doing so, even in the abstract. She was blonde, tall, and loved the latest fashion for people 5 years younger than her, but she could still pull it off. That's why we broke up, really. Her pulling it off. That day we walked down the street, her arm in mine as I told her about how I was the next Walt Disney. 2 weeks later she left the concert we were at, saying she was going to the bathroom. She didn't come back. I later heard she spent the rest of that concert snorting coke off some guy's pierced penis. I figured we were no longer in love once I found out, since I had neither coke nor a pierced penis. 2 months after that night, she called and asked for her things back. Things I'd never heard of. Before she hung up, she said I'd ruined her life because I'd stayed at the concert and didn't save her from the abusive guy she was living with. A week after she left, I had found someone else to go to concerts with who knew how to come back to me after they went to the bathroom. I think it was a better choice for my time out there. I didn't hear another thing from her until the first ads from the movie hit. Someone must have shown her my name in the credits because she called to ask how I was, tell me about her medical problems, and asked if I wanted to see her when I came to LA for the premiere. I told her I wouldn't be coming to LA. We'll get to that in due time. She asked if I still thought about her, and I truthfully answered yes. I didn't tell her it was only after Letterman had done the top 10 list and I didn't have a woman in bed next to me. Then I thought about her. Well, parts of her anyway. I expected to hear from her when the movie opens, and I was right. And then again about 6 months after that when she had to send me her AA apology letter. But that day, I had someone to tell my story to and to show my first Hollywood writer's check to, and she helped me spend about a fourth of it on things I didn't get to take home. And all I could think about was how to get that 13 added to the yellow paper on the legal pad. I had a message waiting for me when I got home. I hadn't given them my cell phone number because at that point I couldn't afford a cell phone. I made my home answering machine sound like a cell phone. I was being given 8 weeks to write the full script. They wanted the story really bad, even though there wasn't a damn original thing to it. So I wrote the script the same way I write everything. I carefully considered the deadline, plan out how many words I have to do a day in order to get the script done in time to edit and rewrite and still make the delivery deadline. Then I screw around for 4 weeks, call it research, write the first draft in a haze of caffeine and no-dos. Then, whoever I'm dating at the time is pressed into service as the first editor while I sleep off all of the caffeine and no-dos. I then do the real rewrite, usually in a couple of days without a break. Another full day of sleep. I take the script in pristine sheets of white bond paper to a coffee house with old furniture, go over it with the red pen of doom, and cut it down to size. This script was no different. My novels I treat with care, because there won't be a committee going over it telling me what to change and paying me to change it. My novels are my children, raised with care until they're ready to go out into the world on their own. Movie scripts are sperm donations at best. If you know anything about movies, you know what came next. Other people have talked about it in far better detail than I ever will, so I'll spare you my repetition. If you've heard the story about Kevin Smith when he was writing the Superman movie and being asked to put in a big mechanical spider because the producer's daughter really liked spiders, and then when he refused, the big mechanical spider showed up in the next movie from the big Hollywood producer. You could also read Dorothy Parker talking about how Hollywood killed her will to write. All the stories about writing in Hollywood end face down in Gloria Swanson's swimming pool. I knew that going in. So the minute I delivered my script, I gave up on having any control over it. They paid me way too much money. I took the money, walked away, and was very happy. However, for those of you who don't know how movies are put together, I'll pull back the curtain a little bit and go over one of the meetings I had. The rest were just like it, only different. They all blur after a while. I was in the middle of the second rewrite of the script on a rainy afternoon, and the office had 5 people dressed alike in the same sort of suit, and a perky guy from marketing who was dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt from the company store. I guess you know he's the creative guy of the group. I knew he was in marketing because everything that came out of his life sounded like a commercial. Remember when Shakespeare said, "First kill all the lawyers"? He wasn't even close. Bill Hicks. Bill Hicks had it right. If you're in marketing or advertising, kill yourself. But I add that they won't do it themselves. We need to help them out as best we can. I found out why during the very first minutes I had to go into a meeting in the first office job I had. The marketing people ran the meeting and ran through all the buzzwords they had read in the latest magazines, even though they had no clue what any of the words meant. In that meeting, I asked what the word synergized means in an honest, thoughtful way. I was told I didn't have a team mentality. There was no I in team, and I'd better get on board. I said there was a me in team, and if they didn't explain what they were talking about, this meeting would be a waste of time for me to be there. And also, team means together everyone annoys me. I lasted about 3 months at that job. But back to the meeting. I was pretty sure it would be another meeting where someone who was paid to hate scripts had read it and laid out a bunch of stupid changes to make, like a character's name or taking out a scene that explained the plot of the movie or something like that. This was a different meeting. The marketing guy seemed to run the meeting. And he started by talking about how much he loved the idea of the movie and just had a few changes to success, all of which had to do with toys. Could there be 4 people who go to Alaska to train the dogs instead of 1? Because toy makers shipped things in lots of 4. Did they have to be St. Bernards, since it would be easier to have Dalmatians, since they already had toy molds of them made? Could we figure out a way to get a monkey in the story? Because there was a toy company they wanted to work with who had a lot of leftover monkey toys from a failed Planet of the Apes toy line. I swear that if he could, he would have made movies about Legos, Tinker Toys, Barbie, and Lincoln Logs. Everything had to do with toys. Nothing about the script, nothing about the movie. Just toys, and how soon we could get them in the store. Until he got to the part that got him fired. After 45 minutes of letting me know that the toy market was waiting for something that had to do with dogs, and they were damn happy to be part of it, he said he felt the lead character should be black. Because research had shown that people like watching black people do slapstick, and he could guarantee we'd have a big weekend if the black guy got smacked around a lot in the script. I actually saw the 5 executives attempt to melt into their seat and ooze away as he dug himself deeper and deeper, talking about how the urban market loved that style of humor. But he didn't want any of the individual scenes to last too long because people in the urban market have a short attention span. That's why they like sketch comedy so much. Then he followed it up by talking about how black people know nothing about snow, and it would be really funny, and to add a fish out of water concept he'd heard about on some page somewhere in the script. From there out, he said it would be an aesthetic thing, since a good black actor would really stand out among all the whiteness on the screen. It wasn't for a good 5 minutes that he registered my shock and revulsion. Mostly because he had the gift of being able to talk without paying attention to anyone he was talking to. When he paused and looked around, I figured I was the only one who wasn't going to be around when the movie started filming anyway, and flush with movie cash, I simply said, I think we should let the casting people figure that out. I wrote the part for a human being to play it, not a prop. He looked around the room, saw the horror on the movie executives' faces, and tried to apologize for the rest of the meeting. It didn't do him any good. By the time he got out of the meeting, his desk was packed. By the time he got back to it, I'll say this for the people in Hollywood, they're efficient. His final check was waiting for him at home before he got there. The courier actually waited for him to show up and sign for it, just so he could call him the dumbest motherfucker he'd ever heard of. And even with all of that, they cast a black lead. They said it was because the comedian they cast was hot with the 18 to 24-year-olds. I think it was because no one had the brains to shred the minutes of that meeting. There were lots of meetings. I learned an easy way to get paid for them was only prepare 2 rewrites after the 3rd meeting. That was a meeting where they sat down with me and cut out anything I was happy about writing. They cut out all the scenes of the lead character hitchhiking. Instead, he got to Alaska by selling his dog, which I still don't know how he got since he had just gotten out of prison. They said it was ironic, and I guess it is in an Alanis Morissette kind of way, which is to say, not at all. They cut the sex scenes, but later I got a small writing credit when the pages from that sex scene showed up in another movie. It proved to me that I could write that sort of stuff after all, so now I'm ready for a career in porn. They cut out anything I liked and had someone else write scenes that were blander and more laughs, L-A-F-F-S. That was their spelling, and it's preserved for your protection. Why did I only have 2 rewrites after that? I learned the only reason they would ask for changes was so they could justify their jobs. So, they would tell me they wanted changes and not be very specific. I think the character needs to be more streetwise. I don't like how he talks down to some of the people. Make him more likable. The third act doesn't build fast enough for me. I'd nod. I'd write the notes. I'd take their money. Then I would give them the other script, and they would praise my speed and understanding of what they wanted. And why didn't every writer just listen to them the way that I did? I can't remember which of the 2 they finally settled on, but there were really only about 5 pages of differences, and most of the differences were done with the thesaurus and moving some scenes back and forth. When they settled on a cast and crew, I had enough money to move back to Iowa. You may laugh, but in a small town in Iowa, you could basically multiply your money. A house there costs less than a third of what it would in L.A., and you don't have to go to meetings that often. You only have to go to the meetings important enough for them to pay for an airline ticket from Cedar Rapids. I have the internet, I have email, and I am so far from marketing people they don't even know I exist. It also made it so the ex-girlfriend had to expend a little energy in order to find me. Yeah, I may have my name on a movie poster, but I still like having my ego fed. The next time I had anything to do with the movie was when they had the first audience preview. They actually flew me in for it. Now, an audience preview is when they get a bunch of people who are going to a movie and give them a pass to a different free movie. They don't know what the movie is that they're going to see. And since they'd decided it was a kids' movie, the audience was filled with families. Now, I could make a lot of snide, nasty remarks about what constitutes a family in LA, but I'm not as bitter as I used to be ever since I got my first royalty check. After the movie, people filled out long sheets asking them in every detail what they liked and what they didn't. It was as if every line of dialogue had to be approved by people who had nothing better to do on a Tuesday night but watch some random movie they knew nothing about for 2 hours. They even had they buy their own popcorn, so if they hated dog movies, they were pretty much screwed having to waste the night with a movie they didn't like and no free food. I don't know why they did the surveys anyway, because one of the producers was at the preview, and at the meeting afterward, he'd already decided what needed to be done with the movie. He threw out the results of the survey with a loud and dramatic flourish, showing that he, like everyone else I'd met in the city, was a frustrated actor. He told all of us the next morning that he had watched a couple of kids in the front row and knew how to make the movie the biggest hit since Titanic. No, really. He thought the skies had parted and divine inspiration had come unto him as if touched by the very hand of God. 25 of us sat in a large room and listened as he stood in front of us and related his tale. I watched our movie, and it was plain to see it needed something that will give it that push over the cliff. It's not that the movie's bad, it's good, it's very good, it's $100 million good. But we could do better. We were racking our brains out, having rewrite after rewrite done at great expense. You got that right, bucko. And then, while in production, we spent even more money. But last night, I saw the answer. It was right there in the row in front of me, as I watched our movie, our work of art. Yep, Monet, Dali, and a dog movie for 7-year-olds are all equal in the eyes of this man. There were 2 little kids making up dialogue for the dogs during the scene when the people weren't talking. And it was brilliant, it was funny, and it was what this movie needs. Now, if you're listening to this, you can tell that I'm a snide, sarcastic jerk. But I'm also smart. And I was smart enough to know to keep my mouth shut. For 3 months, I wrote dialogue for the dogs to say during the boring scenes, which I was informed were scenes where no one was talking or the humans were advancing the plot. I got myself in my 7-year-old brain and I wrote the dumbest jokes I would have been able to get away with in school without getting sent to the principal's office. When I turned in the script, they laughed as if it was written by Tom Stoppard and told me I was brilliant. Brilliant and art are words that have lost all meaning to me as I went through this process. They paid me for a bunch of jokes about dog crap and fat people falling down and dogs making fun of fat people, because fat people are the only minority you can still make fun of in Hollywood. They hired some name actors to do the voice work for the dogs' voices. A couple of them I actually got to see. William Shatner and Sally Field read my inner 7-year-old's jokes, nodding and giving a thumbs up when they thought one was really good. It was strange. Not as strange as sitting at my desk and writing the jokes while listening to Beethoven, but strange nonetheless. In the end, all that matters is that they paid me. They paid me to go write the dog crap jokes. They paid me when I brought them the dog crap jokes. And they paid me when I would make the changes based on the fact that William Shatner didn't like one of the dog crap jokes. I took the money, and I rented a U-Haul, and I moved to Iowa. A small town of 2,000 people where you could buy a house for less than $15,000 because nobody in town has a job if they weren't a farmer, a farmhand, or repaired farm equipment. The movie came out and did fairly well, but it did killer on video. It was so popular they decided to make both a sequel and a cartoon series out of it. I wrote a script for the sequel they didn't like, but paid me for anyway. Because they have to. It was in my contract. They didn't ask me to write for the cartoon. They felt I was too well respected as someone who wrote movies. That and they had a team of toy people to do that. The toy people always win. But I got a check every time that cartoon ran. Every few months I get a call and someone flies me out to LA to get the magic of my dog movie because it's so obvious I have my finger on the pulse of people, having written such a perfect film. They pay me, and I listen, and I give them ideas I wouldn't put in a novel for any reason. Sometimes they give me money and I write a script. Sometimes they give me a script and I rewrite it so it's full of jokes for 7-year-olds. I take their money and I go home and I thank God for email because when I was in LA, I actually thought this sort of shit matters. It doesn't. It's like working at a factory, only it pays better, and you've heard of the people in charge of the union. At least that's what I tell myself most of the time. Truth is funny. It changes depending on who I tell, and it changes depending on what city I'm in. Right now, between you and me, in this little moment of time we're sharing, I would have stayed there, and I would have bought into the machine. And I might even be an executive if I could have just gotten that guy to put a 13 after PG. But I'll never admit it to anybody but you. I want to thank you for listening. This was the second short story that I've turned into a podcast, and I want to let you know something. In October, I've been hinting that a new podcast is joining Solitaire Rose's radio, the Solitaire Rose Empire. I am starting a novel cast. I have written a number of novels, and I'm in the process of editing them. And as I was editing them, I'm reading about how publishing has fallen apart, how it's harder and harder for novelists to get novels printed, and more that people aren't actually reading as many novels as they used to. A couple of the people on my Facebook page are novelists who've had to take second jobs in other places. So rather than try to break into the field the normal way by sending out manuscripts and getting rejection slips, because I've done that for, I don't even want to relate how long. Instead, I'm going to do what I think I'm successful at. I'm going to turn them into podcasts. There will be one chapter every other week. So I'm still going to be doing a podcast a week, depending on schedule stuff. There'll be an episode of Solitaire Rose Radio one week. The next week will be another chapter in one of the novels. Then when the novels are complete, what I hope is I will have the ebooks available on Amazon. But that's coming in October, and looking over the size of the first novel I'm going to be reading, I don't have to worry about putting the novel up on Amazon till at least January or February of next year. Now, one of the things that is part of a podcast are ads. So here's our ads. Solitaire Rose Radio is brought to you by DreamHost.com. DreamHost.com is the best, bar none, web host in the whole known universe. If you need a web page, you can't do any better than DreamHost.com. And if you use the code CRAYZ, K-R-A-Y-Z, you get $20 off your first year. Do you like snacks? Do you like tasty snacks? Do you like tasty, healthy snacks? Of course you do. Go over to Graze.com and you can get healthy, tasty snacks delivered right to your door. If you use the code CORYS, 3R5P, your first and fifth box are free. And they've got all sorts of options. You could get them weekly, you could get them every other week, you could get them monthly. You could get a big box that's fit for sharing, or you could get a small box that's just for you, and you can hide it so nobody else has it. So use the code CORYS3R5P, that's CORYS 3R5P, and your first and fifth boxes are free. I get amazing razors delivered from Dollar Shave Club for just a few bucks. Now I always shave with a fresh blade. Does that make me a genius? Of course it does. So if you want to try it, go to dollarshaveclub.com/crazy and give it a try. I've been using it for over 2 years and it's wonderful. Again, I want to thank you for listening. If you like this short story, let me know. If you like the idea of the novelcast, let me know. I will be having a formal announcement sometime in October. But who knows? There may be a couple episodes up before October. So bookmark it, add it to your iTunes or your Stitcher list, and we'll see what we see. I want to thank you for listening once again, and I'll be back next time with more stories.